Hello, it's Alex here. Welcome back to my channel for those of us who are addicted to sewing. If you've watched any of my recent vlogs, you'll know that I have been making a couple of coats. One that I have thoroughly enjoyed making and the other not so much. I'll start off with the coat that I really enjoyed making, and that is the Sienna Maker's jacket that I hacked into a coat length and fully lined it. And the reason I did that is because when I saw the pattern, when it was released, which is a few weeks ago, I loved it, but I was particularly drawn to View C, which only comes as a jacket. It's not lined. It's supposed to be a very casual kind of chore jacket, probably made in denim or twill, something like that. But I've got something very similar to that already. I have made previously for myself the Ottoline jacket from Merchant and Mills, and a couple of times now I have self-drafted something quite similar for my husband, which I'm not sure if I've got pictures of, but if I have, I'll put them up. And then I thought that it might look really good as a proper winter coat, you know, fully lined, and I wasn't sure how it would work, so I've got one of those sketch pads with croquis in it. They always have figures in them that are just not like any woman I've seen in the real world. But anyway, I find it to be quite useful when you're struggling to visualise something or you just want to clarify it. So I did a little sketch, dusted off the old art A-level. I was really pleased with how it came out, and I thought, yeah, I'm definitely going to go for this, because what I really like about View C is the extra little details on it. It has a sleeve pocket, which frankly I don't think you'd ever use. I think it's purely because it looks fab. And it also has a vent up the back with buttons. When it first came out, only the PDF was available in the UK, and I just, for a coat, no, can't be doing with all that cutting and sticking. So I contacted Kate on the Foldline to see when they were getting it in, and luckily it was only like a week away or something. So as soon as the Foldline had it in, I ordered it. In the meantime, I had seen and bought some fabric on Instagram from a company called Felicity Fabrics, and I've never ordered anything from them before, so I'm always a little bit nervous about that. I mean, I am increasingly ordering more and more fabric online now, but I always feel a little bit happy if it's a company I've ordered from before, so you get an idea of what the quality is going to be like. And they'd said that it was Zara Fabric. Whilst they obviously thought that was a bit of a selling point, that slightly put me off, because I don't know, I think you become a bit of a fabric snob, and I just thought, oh, Zara's, you know, fast fashion, can be a bit hit and miss. So I was a little bit nervous about it. Anyway, when it came, it was gorgeous. And what drew me to it was that one of the fabrics, one of the colours, is a very dark green, and I have been looking for very dark green fabric for a long time. I like fabrics that sort of, you can't quite tell which colour it is. You know, when you get like a colour that you're kind of not sure, is it a green or a blue, or is it a kind of orange, or is it a red? And in this case I was drawn to the fact that it's so dark it's almost black. I snapped it up, and then I had a look in my stash to see if I had any lining fabric, and I found some fabric that I'd bought, I think it may have been about a year ago, could even have been longer, from Fabric Godmother, and it's ex Vivienne Westwood in a dark blue. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely adore Vivienne Westwood, so I'd obviously bought a fair bit of it. I think it looks like about 5 meters. Yeah, I think on camera you can see the contrast between the blue and the green. And the lining has a sort of map, I mean, it's not a print, is it? But, you know, kind of weave a map design in there, but I'm not sure that that's going to pick that up. But yeah, so I was really pleased about that, because I'd completely forgotten that I had that. And then that's It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Anyway, I had a little look over on the Fabric Godmother website today, and obviously that particular lining is long gone, but she has quite a big selection of linings, and none of that nasty acetate that I don't like, and quite a lot of ex-designer ones with logos on, even if you want that. So yeah, really worth a look over there. So the one thing that I did that was a bit of a page one mistake was when I cut the pattern out, I had the fabric with the nap running in the opposite direction to the way I really wanted it to do. If you stroke it in the opposite direction, it's slightly prickly, and I ordinarily like the smooth way to go down the body, and I've done it the other way. Yeah, should know better. I'd twigged what I'd done by the time I came to put the patch pockets on, and I put those the smooth way down, but when I went and looked at it in the mirror when I was fitting the coat later on, I realised that I could really see the difference between the way that the light hit the fabric. So I ended up unpicking it and putting them on in the same way as the rest of the coat. So I think I took a photograph, although it's going to be no makeup, straight back hair. So anyway, whatever, I'll stick it on. So obviously I needed to make a few changes to the pattern. Increasing the length was a fairly straightforward thing, because I just used the pattern pieces for views A and B as a guide. And that was another good reason to have had the printed pattern rather than a PDF. It would have just been a complete palaver. So yeah, adding the length wasn't too difficult. I needed to draft a lining, and you know, to be fair, I did do a pattern cutting course many years ago, so I do actually have a City and Guilds qualification in pattern cutting. I don't think that's anything particularly high ranking, but anyway, that knowledge is still sort of bubbling away in there. But I don't think it was that difficult to do. For the main fabric, the only changes I needed to make was to add some seam allowance to the front facing piece. I could do away with the back facing piece because I was going to have lining fabric there, and then I needed to draft the lining pieces. So obviously using the pattern pieces for the main fabric, with the fronts I basically eliminated the facing piece, but then added seam allowance on, and with the back I added 2 centimeters at the center back so that I could create an ease pleat, which you always need with lining, and I left the back vents exactly as they were on the lining pieces, because I figured, and this worked out well, I figured that it was going to be easier to remove the lining fabric if I had excess later on, which I did. And then the only other thing with the lining which worked brilliantly is that because your main fabric has got this pocket on the sleeve, I do really like that detail, but the other options don't. So there's already a sleeve piece there that's just the plain front sleeve without the pocket detail. So I use that sleeve piece for my lining, and I don't take any length off my lining pieces. I have a way of constructing that to include an ease pleat at the hem. I find that to be a much better way ahead or way forward with that. So yeah, it all came together fairly well. I had to be very mindful of the order in which I sewed things, but pretty much it's the same construction. And what I'm going to do is I will put a post up on my blog, which hasn't been updated in 100 years, but in case anyone's interested in doing the same hack, I'll put a post up with kind of more detail and some photographs of what I did, and also the order in which I made things, because you might find that to be helpful, although obviously it's at your own peril. I ended up tapering it in a little bit at the waist. I don't think you can see that visually, but I think it just would have been too baggy. And even though at this time of the year I want to be able to wear, you know, heavy jumpers underneath it and all the rest of it, it was just a little bit too much. So I think that I probably wouldn't change that on my pattern piece. I'd do it the way I did it, which is to make it up as is, and then reduce it down later and make sure it fits how you want it. But overall, I've got to say I'm really, really pleased with it. I haven't seen a coat with that same pocket detail and the buttons on the back then. Well, I just don't think I've seen one. I've certainly not seen a sewing pattern for one. So I really like how it turned out. I bought the buttons that I have put on it from a company called Textile Garden, and I'd spotted them on Instagram, of course, and she has some really amazing buttons, really reasonably priced, because I don't know about you, but I often find that I head off to my local fabric shop thinking that, you know, the button I'm looking for is fairly straightforward, and they're actually really quite difficult to find. So I'd spotted this company a little while ago and thought, right, next time I'm struggling, I'll buy from them. And I saw these and I thought they would give it a nice contrast. So yeah, they have that contrast, and obviously I've got them all the way up the back. And I have to admit that halfway through constructing the coat, when I was in the local fabric shop, I chickened out and bought a whole load of just plain black ones. But when it came to it, I decided no, I would go for it, because, you know, at the end of the day, I can always change them if I'm finding, for whatever reason, I don't like it, or if it's just too statementy. And the black ones I bought are exactly the same size, so they will work beautifully. But I just, yeah, I like that contrast. I kind of feel like, why bother making a coat with the pocket detail and then have a button that you kind of disappears and you don't really notice it. So yeah, I'm really glad about that decision. But if I find that for whatever reason I don't like it, then yeah, I'll just change it later on, won't I? So yeah, happy days as far as I'm concerned with that one. Can't wait to start wearing it, because my grey coat has not come back yet, and I've been wearing a coat that I made last year, which is the Merchant and Mills Parker, and I really, really like that coat, but it's quite a different style. It's much more kind of casual, and it's quite big on me. You know, I've not lost loads of weight, but I've lost a little bit, and it's quite oversized in the first place, so it does feel a bit tent-like. So yeah, really, really pleased with that one. So before I move on to coat number 2, let me just tell you quickly what I'm wearing. And this is the Blouse pattern from the Avid Seamstress. I made it about a year ago, but I'll be honest, I didn't really get on with this pattern very much at all. I was really disappointed in the fit. For this kind of shirt, normally I wouldn't worry too much about the fit, because it's not particularly tailored, and it doesn't even have bust darts, so I would have expected it to be fairly straightforward, but in fact, even using the right measurements and checking the garment measurements and all of that, it was incredibly tight across the chest, you know, sort of mid armhole to mid armhole. I don't have a particularly big bust, so that's not normally an issue for me, and I ended up having to redraft it and add quite a lot of extra fabric in there just to get it to fit properly. So wasn't too impressed with that. It's kind of put me off them as a company, if I'm being honest. And the fabric is sand washed silk that my lovely husband brought back from one of his trips to China. I'd said to him, would you get me some silk? And normally he says, I'll try. And luckily he had a female client who was quite into fabric, so she pointed him in the right direction, and he came back with about 4 or 5 different colours of sand washed silk, and he bought 2.5 meters of each, and he spent £50, which is amazing, isn't it? Wouldn't it be fabulous if we had that here in the UK? I had my hair done yesterday. No, it's nothing to do with sewing. I've been trying to get rid of the blonde highlights and going back to my natural colour, and I'm not very happy about it. I don't think this is very red at all. So I'm going to see if I can buy something and make it more red, so it might look a bit different next time.